Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally wrapping up my December read, so the end of 2022. And I did manage 6 books in December. If you saw my TBR, there were 6 books on it. I only managed 5 out of those 6, but I snuck in a 6th read in like literally the last few hours and minutes of 2022. In my TBR video, you will have seen that there were quite a few chunkers on my list. So I'm really pleased that I managed actually 6 reads. The one that I didn't manage was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I'm currently reading it right now in January. So, I'm continuing that kind of goal. But I just had so much else, going on. Mainly, I focused on the Count of Monte Cristo. Let's start with that one. So this is the 2nd volume. So there were 2 books, basically. I counted them as 1, technically. I think I counted them as 1 on Goodreads, but as 2 on the Storygraph, because the Storygraph couldn't register a couple of the other books that I read in the year, so I was like, whatever. And I could also find a version that was long enough. So all the versions were like, I think the longest one was 900 pages. And my version with the 2 books has 16 or 1650 pages. So it's quite a lot and a big difference. But I had, I think, about 700 pages left of this to read in December. And I think that I went off on holiday on the 16th of December, so I'm very lucky. I had quite a lot of days off to take over the holiday period, and I, focused on reading this, and I'm really pleased because there was a lot of pages. At some point I was like, okay, if I read 50 pages a day, I will make it by the 31st of December, and I did. I was really glad. You can get in the mood as well the more you read, so it went well. So what are my thoughts about the Count of Monte Cristo? I think it was a journey. Obviously, a book this size is an experience, and there was so much more than I'd previously thought about this book. So I'd seen the movie. Obviously, no movie can do this justice because it's literally so many different stories and almost like different books all in one. There's the stories of a pirate and the stories of him going to prison and all the stories of the surrounding families and their own troubles. And yeah, there's quite a lot to it. It's very of its era, so I don't want to judge it on some of the stuff. But still, it's I think it's one that I would recommend. I gave it 5-star rounded up. I think I would give it 4.5 as like an actual rating, but it may be because I felt so accomplished having read it, so I don't know. I think it's one I would recommend, but also if you tell me you've read the Count of Monte Cristo, it better have been the integral version, because if you haven't, then you haven't read this book. There's literally so much to it that if you read in the British version, you just don't really know what's happened. You may know the broad gist still. So yeah, let me know if you've read it. I can't wait to know what your thoughts are. I will probably do a review of this book as a whole with more thoughts and more kind of delving into the different themes, but this will be coming at some point in 2023 when I have a new laptop. The other chunker that I had to read in December was The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. So this had been one that I'd kind of dragged for a while as well, and I read it. So I read about 150 pages of it and I wasn't really getting to story. I found an audiobook, which I'm glad I did, because I don't think the plot got that much better, and I'm not sure that I enjoyed it. I think this is my least favorite of all the Tartt books, so that kind of tells you something. Afterwards, it kind of stayed with me for a while because I don't think that it ends in a way that's very satisfying, which, take of that what you will and how you would react to that. But I think I still was thinking of the different themes, that I think are quite reminiscent of the other novels. And I will definitely do a video on what I think about all 3 and potentially my recommendation of where to start. This is one that I'm glad I finished, but I didn't click that much with it. And also I'm just a bit disappointed with how it ended. Another audiobook that I managed in December was Villette by Charlotte Bronte. This is a book that I enjoyed enough. I enjoy the character as well of Lucy. I thought she was quite mature, which I think is maybe, I think it's something that we see more of, but they usually grow into who they are. With this one, I feel like there's a jump in like age quite quickly in the book, and then most of the book is kind of later on, when she's a bonne in France. There were some vibes that I had from Lucy, which was very much like the typical expat who's like, I come from a better country than this. And the way that she looked on the French people who clearly judge her from being English as well, the whole dynamic was a bit like cringe to me. Also, I just didn't feel like I really totally clicked with this book. I have to be completely honest. It's maybe one that I would revisit in actually reading, you know, in format, because I think the audiobook, one of the issues I had with it, and I only realized about halfway through, and at that point I'd sunk so many hours into it, I was like, I'm just gonna finish it, is that basically the narrator did a great job in English, but in French I realized that she clearly did not know how to speak French. And about halfway through there was a lot more kind of French going on, and I realized I have no idea what she's saying, and I speak French, so that was a bit disappointing. And she would do these weird French accents. I was just like, why? I was starting to understand the character speaking English with a French accent. I even got a copy of the book and I was like reading, and I was like, they don't really speak with, it doesn't say that they speak with a French accent, you know. I know they do, maybe she was just doing a character, but I didn't enjoy that because I feel like I lost some of the context and some of the understanding of what was going on. I also didn't love the kind of love relationships that's happening. I know there's something I didn't click with, maybe one I will revisit one day, but for now I'm kind of like glad that I finished it. And I will move on to The Tent of Wildfell Hall, well, when the time comes for me to read a new Bronte. Finally, there were two small books that I wanted to read, so I managed both. There was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke and Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I will start with this one. I read it really quickly. I think it took me like, I started on Saturday and I finished on Sunday. It was really quick to read. It's really charming. It's really reminiscent of the first book. But I think with this one, we delve a little bit more in the lives of the people who work at the cafe, which I thought was really cool. And we have a little bit more of the background of the cafe. So I thought that was really good. I wasn't sure how it's going to go. Like the writing is quite pared down. It's very like straightforward, which I don't love, but also it kind of gets straight to it. And honestly, I had so many emotions. I don't know if it's that time of the year and I was just like, I don't know, but I cried at every single story. I think there's 4 stories. I think I cried at every one of them. It was just really touching, and just like the first book, you know, it just grips you with the emotion and the grief and, you know, all of that yeah, I'm really glad that I read it. I can't wait to read the third one now as well. And then I read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I read this as a buddy read with Nix from Nix Reads, and that was really cool. And because this is quite short and we have the same edition, I feel like that went really well because we would like literally message constantly on the Storygraph, like buddy read section, whatever. And so that was quite easy to find out like what was going on. It's such a short read that it was easy to keep up. As a parenthesis, when I did the Monte Cristo as a buddy read with Rosie Gakshot, but she finished it well before I am, so at the end I was like commenting a little bit, but I was like, I'm sorry, I'm so late. But because it's such a large book, it was really difficult, I think, to do the buddy read, like to write stuff, because it's so long, some of the stuff felt inconsequential, so you're reading and you're like, oh yeah, this is interesting, or you know, you have some emotions, but also if I was commenting as much as I did for this one, it would have been never ending because it's literally such a long book, and this is only like 200 pages. For Piranesi, I went in like completely blind. I had heard some good things. It seemed like a love or hated kind of book, and now that I've read it, I understand why. And it's also really difficult to summarize, which also, again, after I've read it, I understand why. It's really difficult. It's kind of weird, like mixture of magical realism, fantasy, sci-fi, mystery. Like there's so much to it. I think one thing to say, which I think both me and Nix had the same, this is not Piranesi. I think that's a fair thing to say, and it's not a spoiler. Because when I went into the book, that's the only thing that I thought that this was Piranesi, the character, but it's not. Anyway, I have to say that throughout this book, I went on phases from thinking this was garbage to thinking it was genius, and I think there's a fine line, you know, between those two, and I just kept going between. But I think generally I really, really loved it, and I love what it was kind of saying, and oh, I can't really say some of the stuff that I really like because it will be a bit of a spoiler and I don't want to spoil it. I think it's a book that is worth trying. And it's a short read, so I think I highly recommend it for that reason. You can try it, and see if it works for you or not. And if you have read it, give me your thoughts in the comments, because I don't want to spoil it, but also I would love to talk to more people about it. Me and Nick were talking and doing our, we had hypotheses going along the story, and that was really cool to share that with someone. I don't think I could have read this by myself, so I highly recommend a buddy read as well. And finally, the last book that I snuck in those last few days, I started it in the last few days, but then I finished it actually just as midnight hit on between the 31st and the 1st of January. So that was Eskimo Pie, A Poetics of Inuit Identity by Norma Dunning. I found this book through Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Read. So basically she recommended, I think it's called Kinauvit, What's Your Name by Norma Dunning, and it sounded amazing and I really wanted to read it, but I couldn't find a copy. But I did find Eskimo Pie by Dunning, so I ended up reading it. It's a short poetry book, so that's why it's quite quick to read. It was really powerful and very angry as well, rightfully so, but I think there's a lot of emotions, and I think there was a lot about identity and existing between, I think she talks about being an Eskimo in the South, and all these prejudices that people have, and even within their own identity. And I thought it was great, and I really can't wait to find Kinauvit. I'll probably look it up when I'm in Canada next time, but I thought it was really, really good. And if you're looking for kind of Indigenous authors to read, I think that's one book that is quick and really packs a punch. And that's it. This was my December wrap-up. These were the 6 books that I read. I feel like that was quite a lot and very different genres. I'm really pleased with my month, actually. I think 6 books is like a good balance, although they were quite big ones. So I felt really accomplished, actually. That was a great way to end the year, and I might do that again, actually, because finishing one large book in December feels like a big accomplishment. It's really nice. But yes, that's it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and see you back. Bye.